Hi everybody, and welcome to another WeatherCastUSA QuickCast. On this QuickCast, we're going to break down the flash flood risk across Texas and look at the oppressive heat dome that continues to strengthen across the central U.S. So let's get into it. First, here's a current look in the late afternoon on July 14th, 2026. You can see across Texas we have flood watches from the Trans-Pecos region all the way through the Big Bend of Texas down to about Laredo. And then up along the I-35 corridor, this includes the Edwards Plateau and also much of the Texas Hill Country. Already a couple flash flood warnings still ongoing there around the San Antonio area as of this afternoon, early evening. But more storms are expected to continue to affect this area. So from areas like Alpine, Pecos, Fort Stockton, over towards Brady, La Pasas, Austin, San Antonio, Kerrville, down to about Laredo. There are going to be multiple rounds of storms, not just today, but through much of the rest of the week. Zooming out a little bit, this is a little bit of a simplified surface map at the continental U.S. And taking a look at things, I kind of just drew it out on my own here, just very roughly. There's some features that aren't shown on here, but I can get the main ones. And the main one that you can see very clearly is at the center of the screen. That is the heat dome over the upper Midwest, and you can see that very clearly. Not a lot of cloud cover. That's because strong high pressure is an inhibitor to cloud development. You can see across much of the upper Midwest, even portions of the Great Lakes, there's not much clouds going on. Further south is that boundary. It's basically a stalled degraded frontal boundary across the south and southeast. That stretches close to the Red River Valley, kind of paralleling the Red River across northern Texas. There is a little more organized low pressure right now across Mississippi, western Tennessee, pushing into the mid-Mississippi River Valley. It's actually drifting a little westward, so some more storms into the afternoon, late into the evening across portions of the Mississippi River Valley, Memphis, Tupelo, into areas maybe around Little Rock, those sort of regions. But that's not really the main player that is enhancing some of the storm activity across the south today. But mostly it's just going to be the pool of moisture below, along, and south of this boundary. That's creating a really hot and humid atmosphere. It's pulling up tropical and subtropical moisture from the Gulf and just producing rounds of showers and storms on the daily. But especially across Texas, we've had some mesoscale convective systems. There's some remnant MCVs drifting around the Texas area. That's why I put a smaller low pressure over there. There's one that looks like kind of around that Texas Hill Country region now. There's a few other kind of more localized, more mesoscale low pressures in areas in northern Mexico. So these little features are sometimes hard for model data to pick up on, but they do enhance that thunderstorm activity once they get going. The expectation by the Weather Prediction Center later into the evening on Tuesday, July 14th, is for the low-level jet to continue to kick in the evening. With these remnant MCVs hanging out in these areas in Texas, it's just going to enhance the lift with a lot of moisture, a lot of instability, and just really wring out those storm systems. So heavy rainfall is definitely going to be a possibility. And the Weather Prediction Center forecast does call for potentially 2 to 4 inches per hour rainfall rates in some of the heaviest storm complexes. That's going to lead to flash flooding on its own, because a lot of this area is already waterlogged. The soil and landscape just can't drain that fast when you have 2 to 4 inches of rain on basically semi-arid landscape anyway. That alone can create flash flooding. And then we've had multiple inches of rain and flash flooding from Monday into Tuesday. A little bit of a little break in the afternoon on Tuesday, but that's going to continue again Tuesday into Wednesday. You can see that heat dome just sitting across the upper Midwest, continuing to pump some of the heat. And the other thing that this weather pattern does is it doesn't give a lot of push to the weather patterns. There's not going to be really a system that pushes this out of Texas. So as long as that stalled boundary is hanging around the south and the Red River Valley, moisture gets pulled up against it, and you have these complexes of storms that produce these remnant MCVs. And it looks like there's a potential that could continue at least through the rest of the week. There's going to be an extended period of flash flooding across especially Texas this week. The other thing that this map shows here in the evening of Tuesday here is we've had number of fires that have broken out across the northwest Ontario, far northern portions of Minnesota. Not just moisture. A lot of times we see moisture and the clouds you can see on this satellite image. But a lot of this up in here isn't actually cloud cover. It's actually smoke from those wildfires up here in the far northern portions of Minnesota and into Ontario. You see that streaming across the Lake Superior region. Much of Ontario, especially eastern Ontario and southern Ontario, is very smoky and hazy, also into Quebec. And then pushing into the northeast, you can see some of that has actually worked its way now down and into the mid-Atlantic. It's going to actually get kind of squeezed between the high pressure and this low pressure. So you can see a little bit of this smoke even getting pulled through the Ohio Valley. And we'll see how far that gets west. That may actually wrap back around the high pressure if there's enough of it. But that pattern is going to create some hazy skies. A lot of this right now is more in the high altitude, but if it does get to the lower altitude, mixes down with some of the precip and storms, potentially there across Canada into the northeast, that could also exacerbate any health concerns if you have sensitivity to particulates like that. And that's been a factor. We're filming this as we were expecting to do a live stream. So I was planning on doing a live stream today, but kind of in standby mode since we haven't had a lot of widespread severe weather. But that is one of the major reasons why the storms have not really got going across Quebec, Ontario, and into the northeast. We've had some isolated strong storms there, but nothing like the models really were showing even as of this morning. Models don't really, it's hard to predict how much smoke a fire will create, and this plume of smoke has been growing all afternoon, and there are a lot of fires out here, so a little bit under modeled. But that has helped stabilize the atmosphere across eastern Canada into the northeast. There's also been precip that hung around a little longer than some of the models showed into the afternoon, especially across Maine, and that's kept more cloud cover in that region. So cloud cover plus the stabilizing effect of this massive plume of smoke has really hampered the storm development. See if we get anything into the evening. Some models still hint at development. We may get some storms kind of on the southern fringe of the heaviest plume of smoke. So keep an eye on that. The severe threat, if there is any, may get shoved just a little bit further south into upstate New York, potentially Vermont and New Hampshire. You can see just as we're filming this, we also do have a severe risk out in Montana. Severe thunderstorm watch now in effect there, so definitely pay attention to the weather out there. Large hail damaging winds are the primary threat in Montana this afternoon. It does look like also, I should note, even if we get some severe weather across the northeast and portions of Canada, it does look like the tornado threat has fairly stabilized compared to earlier, where the Storm Prediction Center this morning actually upped the tornado probabilities to a conditional intensity 1 and a 10% probability. So that looks like it may not verify just because of all the smoke. On the Canadian side of things, earlier, there was a tornado watch in effect as of this afternoon. That was expected to go well into the evening. The Environment Canada did pull that watch, replaced it with a severe thunderstorm watch that's in effect until 10 p.m. in the Eastern time zone. But even that, there's not currently a lot of warnings at all. Actually, no warnings right now in that watch area. So even that's a little bit conditional right now. This is a look at the latest HRRR model, and we'll take a look at this to see how those storms develop into the afternoon and into the evening across portions of Texas. You can see here into the overnight hours, the storm complex starts to build up as that low-level jet kicks in. Remnant MCV in the area helps add that lift, and across the hill country into the Edwards Plateau, we get more storms developing into those overnight and early morning hours. This is not a good model run for flash flooding. This is only the model's interpretation of how this may occur. If anything close to this model verifies it's not going to be a good early morning and even into the day tomorrow in portions of southern Texas and central Texas. This continues to go out until about 10 a.m. And see, 10 a.m. we still may have rounds of flash flooding and heavy thunderstorms occurring across these same areas. This is a little bit of an older model run, but it takes it out a little bit further. This is the 18Z HRRR. And going out past 10 a.m., the concerning thing is this model run doesn't look exactly that different from the latest model run. So that helps show that there's consistency over the models. And unfortunately, that consistency is showing more storm development across these same areas. Can't forget further east, especially across those urban areas like Houston, Again, urban areas very susceptible to flash flooding as well, and areas like Houston that are fairly flat, don't have a lot of terrain differences. Water tends to collect in those low-lying areas pretty easily. Pay attention also if you're in the Houston and even southeast Texas for ongoing storms overnight into the early morning. And then this HRRR run continues through tomorrow afternoon. We may still be dealing with storms. It lessens up a little bit late afternoon into the evening, but then kind of like tonight, it shows another cluster developing into those overnight hours. Maybe just a little bit further north along the I-10 corridor, but in the general same area. And zooming out just a touch, here's the excessive rainfall risk issued by the National Weather Service Weather Prediction Center for today. You can see that yellow area, that's a level 2 out of 4, a slight risk. Areas like Greenville, Jackson, Starkville, just south of Tupelo, over towards Birmingham and Monroeville in Alabama. That's for that area, a little more concentrated storm activity across the south into the afternoon and evening hours with that low pressure riding along that stalled boundary. But the main focus is going to be into Texas, and that's where we can see across Texas, that's where we do have the area of high risk. This is high risk for excessive rainfall, areas around Del Rio, Eagle Pass, Uvalde, and just west of San Antonio as the highest risk. This is some very susceptible flash flood terrain in the Texas Hill Country, the Edwards Plateau, so it does not take a lot of rainfall to cause flash flooding. And with the heavy rain that we've already had since Monday and into Tuesday and through Tuesday, it's not going to take a lot to cause more flash flooding. This is potentially life-threatening flash flooding, so you do need to have a way to receive weather warnings, flash flood alerts. If you are in a flood-prone area, it may be better to evacuate now before the flood waters rise. A lot of times that's a big issue in flash flooding, is when the water rises, and a lot of times it's too late to evacuate. So have your flash flood plan in place early and ahead of time, and it may be time to enact that flash flood plan already with more rain expected and these high risk days by the Weather Prediction Center. Into Wednesday, this is the excessive rainfall risk by the Weather Prediction Center into Wednesday. The high risk area actually expands a little bit, but basically staying in that same general area, Eagle Pass, Del Rio, Uvalde, up towards areas just around the Rock Springs area, and then staying just west of the San Antonio metro area. That's not negating that the San Antonio metro, Kerrville Junction, Ozona, Sanderson, down to areas south of Eagle Pass, those areas are all under a moderate risk, a level 3 out of 4, which is already a pretty big deal. So anywhere in this risk area, no matter what color, the green, yellow, red, and pink, you do need to have a flash flood plan ready to go and be ready to take action should you need to. As well as if you're traveling in these areas, the National Weather Service slogan is "Turn around, don't drown." Please just take the long way home. If you have a low water crossing that is blocked by floodwaters, you don't know if that road is still there. Even if you've driven that road many, many times, even if it's in your routine, please just take the long way home. And then going into day 3, this is for Thursday, the Weather Prediction Center has a moderate risk, level 3 out of 4 in effect. A lot of those same areas, and then also pushes a little bit further towards the north and west into western Texas, a level 2 out of 4 slight risk for excessive rainfall. We also go into Friday now. There is also an excessive rainfall risk into Friday for portions of southeast New Mexico, western Texas. And again, some of this is subject to change as well. But overall, this general area really susceptible for flash flooding over the next at least 2 days, and if not into day 4, day 5. Well, after covering the flash flood risk across Texas, let's take a look at, it's somewhat connected since that heat dome is really just kind of blocking the whole pattern and shifting the jet stream way off to the north, keeping that frothiness across the south and into Texas. Let's look at this heat dome a little closer. First, starting with the air temperatures over the next couple days. This starts at Wednesday. This is the look at the European model for Wednesday afternoon. And you can see into the afternoon, it's going to be pretty hot. Again, across portions of the northern plains, the upper Midwest, across pushing as that heat dome elongates, pushing into the Great Lakes and Northeast with potentially close to 100-degree temperatures, Chicago, Detroit, Columbus, into Washington, D.C., and New York City. And reminder, this is just the air temperature outlook. This is not indicating those heat indices, so temperatures could feel like even a few degrees hotter, especially with the summer humidity in place. As typical this time of year, the Southwest, pretty intense heat. into portions of Arizona, Nevada, and interior portions of California. Looks like, according to the European model, even LA may get a little bit warm tomorrow into the 90s. But right along the coast, you can see San Francisco sitting in the 60s with that marine layer influence. And then a little bit cooler, just a touch cooler, with those clouds and storms across Texas and portions of the South. More rounds of showers and storms expected tomorrow. And again, some of those could be flash flooding, especially for Texas. But anywhere where those storms sit around for a while and produce heavy tropical downpours, that could be some isolated flash flooding anywhere there in that region. Putting this map into motion, you can see it cools down obviously during the evenings. One thing to note, and one issue with the heat dome, is the feels like temperature as well as the actual temperature doesn't cool down that much. So it may look cool on the map compared to seeing all these oranges and purple colors and all those 100-degree temperatures. But if you really look at it, temperatures in this heat dome stay in the close to about 80 degrees for a lot of these areas. So warm, humid nights, your body just can't cool, especially if you don't have access to air conditioning. Vulnerable populations that don't have access to air conditioning are very susceptible for health risks during these heat events. And that stretches everywhere from Fargo and Minneapolis all the way down really to the Gulf Coast and also into the East Coast, Washington, D.C., New York. Low temperatures close to 80 degrees. Putting this map back into motion, you can see those hundreds and near 100 temperatures continue through much of the rest of the week. There is a pattern once we get into the 20th, 24th kind of range, basically into the middle of next week. We do start to see a little bit of a hint of a pattern change where some of this heat gets pushed back towards the west. Texas looks like it could be a pretty hot end of July. Texas and Oklahoma up into portions of Kansas. But we do see a little bit more moderation in those temperatures across the Northeast. For example, this model, July 28th, shows a little bit cooler 70s, 60s, and 80s across the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic and into the Great Lakes. You can see that heat pushed a little bit further back into the central U.S. So that's, again, just one model run. But it has been fairly consistent, the models over the last couple days, showing a little bit of relief from the heat into late July for portions of at least the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes, and into the Northeast and East Coast. Let's take a look at this a little bit differently. This is the temperature anomalies at the 500 millibar level. And you can see in the red, those are those warmer temperatures, cooler temperatures in the blue. That indicates more of the lower pressures and frothiness. And then the red indicates more of those high pressure situations. So you can see that high pressure holding there. That heat dome kind of elongates across the northern tier from the northern plains across the upper Midwest, Great Lakes, and into the Northeast. As I put this into motion, you'll see that continues through basically the rest of this week. Actually starts to kind of even reinforce itself a little bit later into the week across the upper Midwest. You can see that little dip in the jet stream. That's what's bringing that potential for some severe weather across the Northeast and the New England areas the next, maybe another round of storms potentially later this week. The storm predictions are backed off on the day 5 severe risk, but we'll see if they re-add that, as it does look like that area may cool down a little bit into the Northeast. And you can see that general frothiness stays around the South, the Gulf Coast. Some models show a hint of some tropical development. I don't think we're there yet. If we do get more model agreement in that, we'll have another forecast video out for you on that separately. But more storms and locally heavy rainfall certainly possible across from Texas into the southeast as this pattern holds off at least through the end of this week. And then going forward into the future, into the July 20th kind of range, and then further, that's where we see this pattern start to break down a little bit. You can see a much bigger dip in the pattern here. This is indicative of a jet stream pattern change as well. And then we start to get into a pattern change where there's some troughing out into the east. And by the last weekend in July, we have more East Coast troughing, and it wants to build a little bit of a ridge pattern back into the Four Corners, potentially into the high plains. But that's certainly a little bit different pattern than we've been dealing with since this heat dome really set up over the weekend and has continued into the middle now of the week. So that's a look at this quick cast. It was a little bit of a rough quick cast. I didn't really plan it or script it out or anything. Just kind of threw it together really quickly. But I wanted to cover the flash flood risk and the extended heavy rainfall across the areas in Texas this week. Please, again, turn around, don't drown. and also follow local officials' evacuation orders. And if you feel uncomfortable now, if you know you're in a flash flood risk area and a flood prone area, I would highly suggest evacuating before the floodwaters rise. Do that now while things are a little bit calmer, because as we saw on multiple model runs, it does look like the rainfall and thunderstorm activity will intensify going into the overnight hours. It is much harder to evacuate from flooding in the overnight hours. Sadly, about a year ago, we lost the 24 or so school-age children to the flooding disaster in the Texas Hill Country at the summer camp. So please don't let this flood event be a repeat of last year. Please, please, please. Otherwise, you can see those hot skies and clear skies across the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes, and those smoky skies across the Northeast, as well as funneling down into portions of the Ohio Valley, as that will make for a interesting sunset if you have sunset watching plans there from the Mid-Atlantic across the Ohio Valley. See that smoke even funneling through there, Washington, Columbus, Detroit. Looks like a lot of it south of Chicago, but even getting into the mid-Mississippi River Valley as we're filming this late into the afternoon and early evening on July 14th. Stay tuned if you made it this far. Give us a like and subscribe. That really helps the channel. That's a great free way to help the channel. We here on WeatherCast Live are focused on science-based weather communication, no hype content, no clickbait content, trying to do things a little differently here on WeatherCast Live, and bring you important life-saving coverage, especially for severe storms, for hurricane season, and things like this with the flash flood risk. So if you made it this far, give us a like and subscribe. Click that bell icon. You can get notified when we go live, when we post new forecast videos, or post to the discussion page. And we'll see you on the next QuickCast. Also, we'll stay in standby mode in case things do get feisty this evening for severe weather. But again, it does look like the severe threat across the Northeast with the earlier enhanced risk has diminished some with that wildfire smoke. But we'll continue to stay in standby mode, as well as monitor storms across the northern high plains with that new severe thunderstorm watch going into the evening of July 14th for portions of Montana. Thanks everyone, stay safe, and we'll see you on the next one.